watching. So in this week's video tutorial, I really wanted to share with you how I add text onto my cakes. And to do this, I'm going to be using the Sweet Stamps by Amy Cakes. Now, when I was thinking about the kind of tutorial I could make, I was trying to rack my brains with how I could get the most amount of letters onto the front of a cake. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make this Twinkle Twinkle Little Star themed cake. Now, this cake is so sweet and it would be perfect for a baby shower or a christening or even a birthday. And in this video, I'm going to show you not only how I added the letters on the front and on the board, but also how to airbrush the cake, make the 3D moon, the 3D clouds, and add all the stars. So, let's get started. Okay, so in order to make this Twinkle Twinkle themed cake, what I'm going to do is first start stacking my cake. So all I've got here is 5 layers of vanilla sponge cake, and each layer is around an inch thick. Now I'm making this quite high just because I want to have enough room to add the letters to the front. Now I've also got a batch of milk chocolate ganache, so I'm just going to start filling and stacking the cake. I'll also put a link in the description below to another video which shows you in more detail how I stack and fill my cake. Okay, so once the cake has been filled and stacked, all I'm going to do is go around and put a crumb coat on the outside using my offset spatula and scraping tool. Okay, so once you're happy with that first coating of ganache, I'm just going to pop this in the fridge for around 15 minutes just to firm up slightly, just so I can apply another layer. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is make the decoration to go onto the cake. Now, as the cake is going to have Twinkle Twinkle Little Star written on the front, I'm going to make a moon and some stars and also some clouds to go around the edge. So first of all, I'm going to start with the moon for the top. So I've just got some white gum paste, or if you've got modelling paste. So I'm just going to roll that out until it's about 1 centimetre in thickness. I'm then going to use 2 cookie cutters, and I've got one that's 9 centimetres across and one that's 8 centimetres, and I'm just going to use these to make my moon. So first of all, I'm going to cut out the shape with my larger one, and then going to come in slightly with the smaller one, cut a moon shape. I'm then going to go around the edge and just soften that up. All I'm going to do is just take my ball tool and I'm just going to use both ends just to push into my moon. So I just want to create some little boulders on that moon. So once you're happy with the texture of that moon, all I'm going to do is take a skewer and I just want to push this into the moon so that we're able to stick this onto the cake. So all I've got here is the Sugar Flare Pearl White Luster Dust, which is just going to add some shimmer, and then also the edible Sky Grey tint. And just with a small amount, just go in some of those dents that we created just to highlight those. Okay, so to create the stars, I've just got some star cutters in different sizes and also these star plungers. So I'm just going to roll out some more of that modelling paste and just cut some of these stars out in various sizes. Now, with some of these larger stars, what I'm going to do is just use a cocktail stick and just push that up the centre of the star, just so we can add some of these to the top of the cake. So while they're drying, I'm just going to create some 3D clouds. I really love these clouds because they are so cute and you can add them to so many different things of cakes. So all I'm going to do first is start off with some white fondant or modelling paste, and I'm just going to create different size balls and just stack those together so that they start looking like a fluffy cloud. And you might just want to use some edible glue just to stick those balls together. And I'm also going to stack some of those balls on the top. Okay, so once you're happy with how that's looking, we're going to cover it so that it looks like one complete cloud. So I'm going to take a small amount of white icing and I just want to roll this out so it's really thin. All I'm going to do is just cover my clouds in some edible glue, and I'm just going to pick my icing up and drape that over the top. So I'm just going to go around those clouds, just pulling out that icing, flattening it down and pushing it into those shapes. Okay, so once the cloud shape is covered, I'm just going to take my craft knife and just cut around the edge, leaving a gap of about 1/2 centimeter. I'm then just going to lift the cloud up and turn it over. Pull the rest of that icing around onto the bottom of that cloud. Okay, so I've made a few clouds for around the edge, and here we have the finished 3D clouds. So I made a few different shapes. Okay, so my stars have been at one side drying, and I'm just gonna add some color to those. So I've just got a combination here of some royal gold and some radiant gold luster dust. And to this, I'm just gonna add the Sugar Flare Rejuvenator Spirit, which is just gonna turn it into a paint. Now I'm gonna go ahead and paint all my stars just to get them ready to add to the finished cake. Okay, so now the decorations have been created and have just been left to one side to dry. I've taken my cake out of the fridge and I'm just going to put the last coat of ganache on top just to smooth it out before we add our icing. Now I'm using the Renshaw Atlantic as a base colour. Because we're going to be adding the sweet stamp, what you want is an icing of fondant that stays quite soft, just to allow you to push the letters in. I will again put a link in the description below to a more detailed video of me showing how I cover my cakes. So if you want to see that, check that out. So here we have the cake ready to add the letters to. Okay, so we've been creating the Twinkle Twinkle themed cake, and this is the part that I'm most excited about, and that is adding the text to the front of the cake, and I'm also going to add some text onto the board. So to do that, I'm actually going to use these letter embosses. Now these are the sweet stamps by Amy Cakes, and these are such a fantastic idea. So what we have here is 3 sets of the sweet stamps. Now I've got the handwritten set in the upper and the lowercase, and also the full cookie set. So this has the upper, the lowercase, some numbers, and just some punctuation. I also have the sweet stamp tacky mat, and this is just to place on top of your letters to make it easier to push those onto your cake. And I have the 2 brushes from the Sweet Stamp Professional Brush Duo. So with these letters, all we're going to do is push them into the icing, and they create an embossed version of the word. You then paint the inside with your brushes, and it just makes this beautiful lettering. So all I'm going to do is start taking out my letters. So I've just got some tweezers here, and I'm just going to go in where you've got these tiny triangles missing to get those letters out. And to start with, I'm just going to do the second twinkle and the little star, and then add the first twinkle once these are in place. Now for some of the letters, like the T, there may only be one of those. So I'm just going to leave a space that's big enough so that we can add the additional letter at the end. And I'm just going to lay these out so they're exactly how I want them on the cake. Okay, so once you're happy with how the words are looking, I'm just going to take my Sweet Stamp tacky pad and just remove the plastic from the back of there. I'm then just going to bring that over the top of the letters and just push that down. Now when I lift it up, this has just created a stamp which I can use to place on the cake and push those letters in. Okay, so now I've got my covered cake, and what you want to do is, as soon as the cake is covered, use your letters to emboss the word. Starting on one side of the pad, I'm just going to apply pressure onto the cake, just making sure that I'm pushing those letters in. So as you can see, we've got the twinkle and the little star. What I'm going to do is remove the T, because we need to add another one of those, and also take the twinkle off so that I can apply that onto the cake. Now I'm going to do the top twinkle by hand, just so I know how it will fit on. So I'm just going to take the little T, and I'm just going to push that into the gap that we left. Now for the twinkle above, we do have 2 options. So because it is at the start of the sentence, you could use the smaller T so it matches the one below, or the uppercase set does have a capital T. So for this one, I'm going to use the capital T just to show you the difference. So I'm just going to place that on and push in by hand. I'm then going to go ahead and write the rest of the word. Now all I'm going to do next, before I paint in the embossed letters, is just airbrush this cake just to make it look a little bit more like the night sky. So the reason I'm airbrushing the cake is just to give some variations of blue shades. So I'm just spraying on some chroma color blue just over part parts of the cake, and around the top edge and on top of the cake I want this to be more of a navy colour, so I'm just going to add a few drops of black into my blue just to darken that down slightly. Now, if you don't have an airbrush, you can just use some luster dust or some edible petal dust, or you can just leave it one shade. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this to one side just for that airbrushed colour to dry so that we can add the silver to the lettering. So while that's drying, I'm just going to get our board ready. Okay, so for my board, I've just got a 10-inch drum board, which I've just covered in some white icing, and all I'm going to do is add some text around the front. So I've just got a 6-inch drum board here, which is the same size as the bottom of my cake, which I'm just going to place on the board so I know where my cake is going to sit. I'm then going to take my letters and just spell out my message on the front, and once you're happy with the positioning of those, all I'm going to do is just push the letters into the icing. There we have the one today. So all I'm going to do is paint inside the letters, the same as I'm going to do on the cake. I'm going to start painting the board just while the cake is still drying. So all I've got here is some Wilton blue, which I'll mix with a tiny bit of white and some alcohol just to get a very similar colour to the cake. And I'm just going to use the smaller brush from the Sweet Stamps Duo, and I'm just going to paint inside those letters. So once we're all finished, here we have the board with one today. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the front of the cake. So I've just taken some satin silver luster dust and I'm just going to mix it with the Sugar Flare Rejuvenating Spirit, and I'm again going to use the small paintbrush from the Duo set, and I'm just going to paint inside the embossed letters. Okay, so here we have the finished lettering on the front of the cake. So I'm going to put the cake onto the cake board and just add all the finishing touches. Okay, so now I have the cake on the board and I've just used a large offset spatula just to lift that into place. All I've done is create this template on a large sheet of paper, and it's just some circles which give the shape of clouds, and I've cut that out of a long piece of icing and I'm just going to stick that around the edge. Okay, so to finish off the cake, I'm going to start by adding in the 3D clouds that we created. So I'm just going to pop some edible glue onto the bottom of those and just place those at the side of the cake. I'm then going to pop the remaining 3 clouds on the top, and I'm going to take my 3D moon that we created and I'm just going to push this into the center. It sits in front of those clouds. I've then just got my stars which we popped onto the end of skewers, and I'm also going to push those into the cake. I'm then going to pop some of the other stars that we created around the edge of the cake. So I'm just going to pop some edible glue onto the back of those. Okay, so just to finish it off, I'm just going to use the really small paintbrush and some white food gel, and I'm just going to add on little clusters of tiny dots just to look like more stars. Now, as well as those stars, I'm also going to add some twinkling stars. So to do this, I'm just adding a cross with 2 diagonal lines. So here we have the finished Twinkle Twinkle Little Star cake. I really hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial and have enjoyed seeing how I made all the different elements that made up this cake. If you have liked seeing how I added the text and are interested in the Sweet Stamps by Amy Cakes, then I will put a link in the description below. Also, if you haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all the cake decorating tutorials to come.